This is week 6, Tuesday's assignment, lesson 21, page 41. Okay, so here we have algebra. We're going to be doing multiplication patterns with decimals. Anytime you multiply a whole number or a decimal, it's definitely going to determine where that decimal position is at and whether you're multiplying by a whole number or a decimal, if that decimal is going to move to the right or to the left. Okay, so what that all means, let's look at this first example here. All right. What you're multiplying first here, these are all whole numbers here. Yes, you're still multiplying by decimals, but these numbers here, these are your whole numbers. Anytime you're moving, multiplying by a 1, a 10, 100, or 1,000, your decimal number is going to move to the right. Okay. So look at this first example. 1 times 5 and 18 hundredths. Well, anything times 1 is always that number, so it's going to remain 5 and 18 hundredths. The second one is 10 times 5 and 18 hundredths. Well, this decimal is going to move one digit to the right. It's going to be between the 1 and the 8, like here, 51 and 8 tenths. 100 times 5 and 18 hundredths. I have 2 zeros here, and it depends on how many zeros you have, is how many times you're going to move. Only moved one time here. Now I have 2 zeros here. I'm going to move 1, 2. All right, so that means my decimal number is here now. That's a whole number. All right, anytime you have a whole number with a decimal behind it, to the right of it, that's a whole number. It's always a whole number. Every single number has a decimal behind it, and that makes it a whole number. Okay. So 1,000 times 5 and 18 hundredths, I have 3 zeros here. So my decimal is going to move 1, 2, 3. And there you go, 5,180. Okay? Now, that's when you're multiplying. These numbers here are whole numbers. There's no decimals here. There's decimals here, but not here. Now look at this one. Here I have decimals. Okay? These go to the right. You're going to move to the left. So it depends. This makes a big difference here. This is a whole number going to the right, decimals going to the left. Okay, so what does that mean? So right here, this 2,457, all of them have a decimal behind them. Okay, so 1 times 2,457 is just 2,457. That decimal's still there. 1/10 times 2,457, that decimal moves one digit because there's 1 zero to the left. So this was your original decimal here, so now it's here, 245 and 7/10. 100ths times 2,457 is, you start here, you have how many zeros? 2, so you move over 2, because remember it was right here. So your answer is 24 and 57 hundredths. So don't get confused by that. Whatever you're multiplying by, like here is the 1, 10, 100, and thousandths, you're going to move your decimal to the right, depending on how many zeros you have. You'd move it once here, twice here, and 3 times here. If you're multiplying by decimals here, okay, you're going to go to the left. And it also depends on how many zeros you have. 1 time to the left, 2 times to the left. So that decimal is going to be your guide. All right. So let's look at number 1. It says complete the pattern. We have 1 times 25 and 89 hundredths. All right. So this here is the same as this one here. So we're going to be moving everything to the right. Decimals. 1 times 25 and 89 hundredths. Well, 1 times anything is always that number, so we're going to remain 25 and 89 hundredths. 10 times 25 and 89 hundredths. Decimals here, so it's going to go over 1 digit because I have 1 0 here. So I'm going to rewrite it 258 decimal 9. 258 and 9 tenths. I have 2 zeros here. I'm going to start at my decimal here and move it over to the right. Now I have 2,589. My decimal is still at the end here. Okay. Then I have 1,000 times 25 and 89 hundredths. 3 zeros here. So my decimal is going to move to the right 3 times. I have nothing here, so that gets added in there. 25,890. And you can go ahead and put that decimal there if you need to. Okay. Number 2. So here's what you're multiplying by. Same as right here. So this time we're multiplying by decimal, so your decimal is going to move to the left. So all these are going to move to the left. If it helps you to write a little arrow there so that you know, perfect. And keep in mind that every single one of these is a whole number, so there is a decimal there. 1 times 182 is just 182. 1 times any number is that number itself. And it also depends how many zeros you have, how many times you're going to move to the left. My decimal's here. I'm moving it over times 1/10 is 1 time. So 18 and 2/10. I have 2 zeros here for the third one. So I'm going to go 1, 2. That decimal is now between the 1 and the 8. 1 and 82 hundredths. Okay. So the direction depends on this number here. Whole numbers, you're going to go to the right. Decimals, you're going to go to the left. These whole numbers here have a decimal at the end. All whole numbers have a decimal at the end. How many zeros you have depends on how many times it's going to move. So let's go to page 42 and let's do a couple of these examples. Okay. So let's look at number 1. It says complete the pattern. Here is what they were multiplied by. Those are all whole numbers, so you know they're all going to go to the right. All right. So our decimals here, 2 and 7/10 times 1 is 2 and 7 hundredths times 1 is 2 and 7 hundredths. 2 and 7 hundredths times 10. That decimal is going to the 1 time to the right, and there it is. It was here, and now it's here. It's going to move 2 times. Okay. So 1, 2. It's now here. 3 times, 1, 2, 3, and it's now here. Okay, it started right behind the 2, went over 2 times, went over 3 times. Number 2. Here is my decimals. That means it's going to go to the left. My 30s have a decimal behind them. It's a whole number. 1 times 30 is 30. 1/10 times 30 is, I'm moving it over 1. Why? Because I have 1 0 here. So now it's just the number 3. I have 2 zeros here. So this decimal is going to be moved over twice. And it just becomes 0 and 3/10. Now you can add the 0 back there if you want to, make it 30 hundredths. That's fine. It's the same thing, but there it is, 3/10. Okay. Let's do number 8, and you'll do the rest on your own. I have whole numbers, so it's going to the right. 1 times 10 is 10. 10 times 10. These are pretty easy, actually. Is 100. 100 times 10 is 1,000. And 1,000 times 10 is 10,000. So that one was a pretty easy one. So just keep in mind, just remember that if these numbers here, you're going to go to the right, start at the decimal. How many zeros you have depends on how many times you're going to move the decimal. 1 time, 2 times, 3 times. If you have decimals here, what you're multiplying by, you're going to start with your whole number and put a decimal at the end. And that's how many times you're going to go over. 1 time here because there's 1 0 here. 2 times here because there's 2 zeros here. Okay? And then you'll also do numbers 10 and 11. I will be putting up Wednesday's assignment up this week. So be looking out for that. If you have any questions, don't forget that you can text me, you can call me, we can FaceTime, you can email me, you can go and remind, you can ask me a question on the classroom, the Google Classroom, whatever you need to do to get a hold of me, okay? Hope you guys have a good Tuesday, and I will see you guys later.